Welcome back into the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast with our fifth hole hitter, our closer here, Matt Josephs from sportsmemo.com, on Twitter at midmajormatt. Matt, welcome in. How you feeling?
Feeling good. This is a new spot for me. I was very surprised. I liked the back end of the card today in terms of the games that we're going to get to talk about. Some fun ones indeed.
Absolutely, man. We got starting off here in kind of your comfort zone in the MAC. We get Ohio and Western Michigan, 189, 190. And guys, if you're new to the Every Game on the Board podcast, we're just going down in rotation order. That's those little numbers next to the team name on the live odds screen at wagertalk.com, hitting every single game on the college football betting board. It's Ohio, Western Michigan kicking off part number 5 here. Anywhere from pick'em to -1 now. That's the Bobcats as the road favorite, 58.5 being the total. Matt, do note, or people out there do note, it was 2.5 the other way. That was Western Michigan as the favorite. So we got a flip favorite here, Matt. You liking anything in the MACtion to kick us off?
That always scares me a little bit, especially because, this is not one of those Big Ten games. It's not an SEC game, Big 12, Power 5 of any sort. So if there is some sort of flip, it means somebody knows something. It doesn't always mean it's going to happen, but it's a little bit of a worry here. And when you look at Ohio, you see a really good offense and you see a really bad defense. One of my easiest victories last week was the team total over for Akron, and they score 39 points in a loss. And they were able, we know how good Akron's offense is, or not so good. And now you look at a Western Michigan team that have kind of faded from time to time when it comes to looking at things. They were a really young bunch entering the season. Of course, now as it goes on, you start getting away from that sort of thing. And, it was a tough loss to Eastern Michigan last week at home. It's a big rivalry game. All those directional Michigans probably don't like each other here. The only play I would certainly go in something like this is an over. Ohio is certainly capable of scoring. The question is, can Western Michigan do their part? And their team total is 29.5, so Vegas seems to think that they can do so as well. The only place I would kind of look here, if I was to play something, would be the over, because Ohio's defense is abysmal.
And Matt, how much do you concentrate in the MAC? I know it's in your name, mid-major, but like for the MAC, is that one you really concentrate on?
Yeah, I would say the MAC's kind of one of the ones, and like look, early on, I would say I've played a lot of Sunbelt games, obviously, because James Madison's there. I've played some AAC games and things like that, and I'll certainly play the MAC when the situation's right. As I just said, Ohio's defense is very poor, and so when we played Akron's team total over last week, I didn't expect it to hit as much as it did. I think DJ Irons at halftime had like 2 incompletions, so certainly Ohio's defense is something I'd like to pick on. The question is, can Western Michigan do enough to help out here?
We got next game up in the Big Ten, Wisconsin at Michigan State. We're seeing the Badgers -7 in the hook on the road, 49 the total in East Lansing.
Well, the thing that I've certainly been able to, and I don't, we can't play props here in the state of Virginia, but I could still give them out when I see them. Playing the opposing quarterback's passing touchdown over against Michigan State has been a gold mine, going all the way back to Michael Penix Jr. I think that was week 1 or 2 for Washington. CJ Stroud went over his number at halftime. I think it was 3.5, and he had 4 at halftime, finished with 6. Michigan State's secondary is still bad. I mean, it's a bad team all the way around. You just look and you have to wonder what their head's at in this game because of how bad of a beating they took against Ohio State. Wisconsin's an offense I don't love, though, especially on the road. At times they've struggled this season. I was very pleased to see that they basically did what they wanted to against Northwestern. In theory, they should be able to do what they want to here. I can't get involved with Michigan State. They seem like a bad team right now. They've got a bye week, and then they play Michigan coming up, so that's a big game. This one's a pass for me because I don't trust Wisconsin's offense enough on the road. I certainly don't trust Graham Mertz enough to go over any sort of passing touchdown thing, even against a bad secondary like Michigan State.
Western Kentucky, Middle Tennessee up next here. We're seeing Western -8-point road favorites, bought up from an opener of 6.5. So we've seen some Hilltopper money, 67 high total here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Yeah, Austin Reed has been great. Obviously Bailey Zappi's doing what he's doing in the NFL right now, but Austin Reed has been a fantastic replacement in this offense. He's flourishing right now. Now, look, the way they play defense, I don't love giving 8 on the road, so I certainly wouldn't look to the Western Kentucky side. The question with Middle Tennessee is who's the real team? Is it the squad that went to Miami and won and threw some deep passes and beat up on the Hurricanes secondary, or is it the team that lost 41-14 to UAB last week? They're so, one way or another, it feels like with Middle Tennessee. The only place I would go here potentially is the home dog, because I think they could potentially keep up in a shootout, but very few teams are going to slow down Western Kentucky in this thing. And Western Kentucky's had a couple of tough losses. They played some tough opponents here. My win total under, would love to see them lose here. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Next game up, Charlotte UAB. Just talked about the Blazers. UAB minus 23.5 at home, 63.5 being the total. 49ers and Blazers, 3:30 on Saturday, Matt.
Charlotte's offense has been good, and it's going to hopefully be even better now. They're coming off the bye week after the 41-35 loss to UTEP, and their team total's 19.5. I think Charlotte can score some points here. UAB's defense is not perfect. I mean, they've played pretty well so far this season, but I think UAB can be thrown on just a little bit. So I might look at a Charlotte team total over around 19.5. UAB also has Western Kentucky up next. That's a huge game for them. It's a road trip to Western Kentucky. Could be two teams vying for a spot in the championship game there. So maybe UAB pulls off a little bit late. We know Charlotte's defense is terrible, so they shouldn't do much in the way of any sort of defensive slowing down of UAB, but maybe Charlotte helps this over, and maybe you take a look at a team total over here for Charlotte, because Chris Reynolds and that offense is capable of putting up some points even in garbage time.
Next game up here is we're talking with Matt Josephs at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter, sportsmemo.com. Louisiana Tech and North Texas. High total here, although we've seen some under money, open 71.68 right now as we're talking midweek. Minus 6.5. That's North Texas, the Mean Green at home, hosting Louisiana Tech here, making the trip from Ruston, Louisiana to Denton, Texas here, Matt.
Yeah, and I think Louisiana Tech's starting to figure things out. The reason why I kind of like their team total over before the season was I thought the coaching was going to be good. And while they had some things to figure out early and they had a tough early slate, I think that win over UTEP's going to give them a little bit of confidence here. Now, North Texas is a team I don't necessarily love. Their offense is really good, and they're coming off a bye week, which I think is going to help. They beat FAU 45-28 last time out. I think North Texas comes out of this thing refreshed a little bit. Their team total's around 37.5. I think that I'm going to watch this one as we get closer. If it gets around that key number of 7, maybe 7.5 or something like that, I might be interested in Louisiana Tech. Always scary on the road, especially with such a young team. But I think last week's going to give them a little bit of confidence. And I think the coaching is going to start showing in their improvement as the weeks go along.
Matt, next game up, it's a battle of owls in South Florida. Rice and FAU. We're seeing Florida Atlantic -4 in Boca Raton, 56 the total, 6 p.m. Eastern. Battle of owls here, Matt.
Yeah, and always you want to make sure to check the weather for the Florida games, as always, just in case the rain, the wind, whatever, that always affects things. But kind of a surprising line. It's not what I necessarily would have thought it would be before the season. I was high on Florida Atlantic, and I think the week off can almost help them out a little bit to kind of cleanse the soul a little bit after that 45-28 loss to North Texas. You've got Rice, who almost probably would have wished to not have a bye week because they beat UAB 2 weeks ago in a game that certainly didn't go the way I think people thought it would. I kind of have a lean here to Florida Atlantic, Drew. I think Florida Atlantic's the better team, and I think the bye week almost hurt Rice. Their offense isn't great. Their defense has been good, but certainly can be exploited. I think the bye week did Florida Atlantic well, and I think the bye week might have snuffed a little bit of the momentum out for Rice. Slight lean to the home team in this one.
Yeah, I'm with you, Matt. I mean, the thing I'm worried about, I haven't seen Rice a lot. I mean, they're sitting at 3-2. They've kind of surprised people against the spread, 4-1. So they've kind of been underrated. That's the reason I haven't bet FAU yet. I mean, have you gotten a look at them? How do you feel just in terms of Rice, how good they are this year?
Well, so, I mean, that's the tough thing here. You look at the Rice game so far. They open up against USC. Of course, they got blasted. They won an FCS game. They beat Louisiana, who, I mean, has been all over the place. I watched Louisiana lose to Louisiana Monroe, and then I watched them last night go to Marshall and win. And then Rice hung tough with Houston. But what have we seen from Houston? So you're right. Rice is somewhat of an enigma here. They've kind of played to the trends somewhat outside of that UAB game. The USC game went terribly. The FCS game went great. The Houston game was close, but what do we know about Houston? So you're right. That I think that's kind of the reason why I'm a little hesitant here, Drew, because I certainly would set this line higher than 4 because I think FAU is a pretty good team. But if the odds makers are setting thing at 4, I just think, Drew, the bye week's going to hurt Rice. There's certain situations where you want to keep playing as a team, and coming off a win like that, I think you want to keep playing, and maybe some of the momentum gets ended a little bit. Maybe this is also, as we've talked about in the past, this is a good live game to get an early feel. Who's playing well off that bye week? Who looks a little hungover, a little sad that they did just come off a week off, Drew? So maybe instead of playing FAU early, you wait until the game starts. Maybe FAU's down early a little bit, but they're showing a pulse. You get a better number for FAU. So maybe this is a perfect live situation here.
All right, Matt Joseph's bringing the heat here. 4 games left. True degenerate special as we're heading to the island here. 201, 202, midnight Eastern kick. Nevada at Hawaii. We're seeing Nevada -6-point road favorites, 50 being the total. Hawaii, that rough start to the season. It's not like Nevada's great shakes here, Matt, but I don't know. Hawaii at home tends to be a spot I'd like to bet them. However, sometimes it hasn't been a great bet. I don't know. What are we doing here? If it's last game on the card, get back special, somebody needs a bet, which way would you point them?
So obviously this is an ugly game. This is a horrendous game. But I mean, I think I agree with you, Drew. If I was to play anything, and of course we don't necessarily advocate the trying to get it all back in the final game of the season. We've seen what is it? SVP's bad beats were like the first 3 weeks involved Hawaii games. So certainly some weird things have been happening on the island. But look, and we're going to talk about this for the next game too. Nevada, Colorado State last week was a huge game, Drew, for so many reasons. Nevada going up against their former coach, a lot of their players that went to Colorado State. And Nevada looked awful. And I really said that I was really tired because I wanted to watch the game because it was just so awful. Colorado State scored 2 touchdowns on defense. We know that Nevada wants to run the ball with Tawa, but so does everybody else. And look, Hawaii's coming off a game in which they hung tough with San Diego State. Now, we know San Diego State's offense is horrendous, but what's the difference going to be between Nevada and San Diego State entering this game? San Diego State wants to run the ball. Nevada wants to run the ball. They don't want Cox or Illingworth throwing the ball a ton. So, this would be the perfect case, Drew, of this being a vacation for this team. Like, these players have had a miserable season. They're coming off a tough loss in a big game that they kind of put a lot into, and now they're flying to Hawaii. I can't expect them to be focused for this game, Drew. I don't love this situation, but I certainly think Hawaii's probably the play here. You can't take the Wolfpack on the road in this situation. You just can't after that last game they just had.
All right, look towards the dog. +6.5 is available. We'll see if we get 7 by kickoff. Speaking of Colorado State, they're hosting Utah State. We're seeing the Utah side of it. The Aggies -11 and a hook, road favorites, 45.5 being the total. So Utah State off of the Air Force win, laying doubles on the road in a game totaled 45. What's going on here, Matt?
I mean, there's so many clashing situations here, Drew. As you just brought up, let's start in the Utah State side. Hitting the road as double-digit favorites after an emotional win against their rival. And these two have started to become a little bit of a rivalry, Air Force and Utah State. Utah State prevented Air Force from getting bigger things last year. So you have an Aggies team. And look, there's always the worry, Drew, when you come off of preparing for a triple option team, that next game, there's a little bit of residue from the last one. And now we've talked about it and people have seen my thing. I never lay double digits. I don't care who it is. I don't care what the situation is. I don't care if they're playing a high school team. I just don't like laying double digits, especially with a team that I don't think is very reliable in Utah State. It's not like their offense is going to be consistent every week. They're playing their backup quarterback, who oddly looked very good against a good Air Force defense last week. And then we just talked about Colorado State, Drew. They won the emotional game against Nevada. And they didn't look good doing it. Their 2 touchdowns were defensive touchdowns. Their defense got up for this game because they wanted to beat Nevada, because they wanted to win this game for their coach, who was at Nevada, even though he's brought like the whole team to Colorado State. So I certainly can't play them either here, Drew, because what kind of momentum can you gain from a game like that where your offense was terrible and your defense scored all the points? This was completely ugly. So many clashing styles and situations here. I got to pass on this one.
We got Stanford and Notre Dame up next. 7:30 Eastern kick here. 205, 206. We're seeing the Fighting Irish -17 in South Bend, 53.5 being the total. Stanford, Notre Dame, Matt.
I'll be interested to get your opinion in this one too, Drew, because Notre Dame's had a bunch of these interesting games in a row. You look at this BYU game that they're coming off of, very tough team, very physical team. North Carolina was a big game, and then they had that Cal game as well. And there's so many different styles here. It's almost like there could be a little bit of a letdown if you're Notre Dame after what they've done so far this season. I know they have bigger things that they're trying to do. Of course, the biggest thing is not going to happen with regards to a national title appearance or playoff appearance. But like the few times I've seen Stanford, Drew, I've been kind of impressed with them. I mean, I don't love what I see, but I saw their offense hang a little tough against Washington. They nearly beat Oregon State last week. I'm trying not to convince myself to do this necessarily, but I kind of think Stanford might be a little alive here, Drew. I don't know what you think, considering what we've seen from Notre Dame, but do you think there's any chance Stanford's a little alive in this one?
I mean, I wouldn't lay 17 with Notre Dame. I'm not really interested in that side. In terms of Stanford, I was involved in their USC game, watched pretty much every play of that game. I don't think Stanford's offense is very good, and that's where they've kind of struggled. So in terms of winning it outright, I do think Notre Dame wins. In terms of covering, though, Matt, I would probably say this thing finishes like, I don't know, 30-17, something like that. Notre Dame wins.
Yeah, the under probably would be a better play, and it's not like Notre Dame doesn't have a look ahead. I mean, they would be one of those teams you look at it and be like, oh, who are they playing next? So they're playing UNLV next. So it's going to be another one of these games where there's nothing to look forward to, so they're going to kind of be focused. And you look at Notre Dame's defense. I mean, they gave 17 to Cal. They gave up the 26 to Marshall. I mean, they held Ohio State to 21. That's a pretty nice effort by Notre Dame here. So maybe the under is the way to go. Stanford's team total's 18.5. I mean, that's not necessarily a terrible way to go. Is the under there? That way you don't have to worry about if Notre Dame's offense scores 40 points, you don't potentially lose that play. You could look at the Stanford team total under, especially if Notre Dame's defense shows up in this one.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, in talking about Notre Dame's schedule, it's like that every year. I mean, they got like big games all over the country, it seems, because they're not in a conference and everybody wants to play Notre Dame. So I don't know that I would factor that in as much, like schedule spot wise. I feel like they're like playing BYU. They actually look pretty good. They beat UNC. This is a different style of matchup. I would worry about that, Matt, but I don't know. I doubt I get involved Stanford, Notre Dame. And speaking of UNLV, they're the last game on the card here. Another degenerate time slot. A good late night card here on Saturday, 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific, 207, 208, guys. Last game on the board. Air Force UNLV. We're seeing the Falcons -10 on the road, 50 being the total. Matt, I just lost on Air Force laying doubles on the road last week. I'm not going to do it again here. I actually looked towards the Rebels. I circled them. Haven't bet it yet. Are you liking anything in Las Vegas, Nevada?
Yeah, it would be UNLV or pass here, and I really wonder, how much was last week a mirage for Air Force's defense? I mean, they just, Cooper, Legas, whatever his name is, he was just able to do whatever he wanted, and Air Force's defense has been pretty good this year, and so it really comes down to the way you handicap this game is if you believe that Air Force's defense is either going to continue to struggle because we know UNLV can score. Certainly, they didn't do it against San Jose State, but that's a tough road trip. San Jose State's defense is really good. So I'm going to kind of throw out the 7 points that they scored there, and they'll be home. I think there'll be a decent home field advantage. Obviously, I think there'll be some Air Force fans that travel, and I think that there'll be some Air Force support in the stands here. There could be a slight lean to the over. If you believe that UNLV is going to put up some points, I think Air Force is going to put up some points. They're a different team away from home. The other thing to kind of consider, although I don't do it as much with the academies because they're not necessarily built for look-aheads, the Boise home game is up next for Air Force. That's a huge game in this Mountain West Conference. Of course, maybe the importance comes down a little bit because Air Force lost that game to Utah State, but that's a huge game with Air Force and Boise next week. I think the over might be the way to go here, but you're going to need UNLV to add some points. And not that UNLV would be looking ahead, Drew, but they've got the Notre Dame game up ahead. I don't think they'll do any sort of looking ahead. I don't think they're going to do any sort of resting of players here. But if they have one eye next week to Notre Dame instead of focusing in on this very intricate triple option, they're going to get steamrolled in this one.
Yeah, it could be a long night if you're not prepared for the options. So, yeah, I agree with you. It's surprised to see some under money, open 53.5 down to 50. Something to watch there before kickoff Saturday night. Guys, he's Matt Josephs at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter. He's got a free play up here in the Thursday night NFL game. If you're watching live or before this kicks off, check out his page, sportsmemo.com. He's 45-29 in college football this season. He was 130-98 last season and 98-59 in 2020. So a heck of a 3-year run here in college football. Obviously knows his college football. Doing the Every Game on the Board podcast each and every week. Doing a great job doing it. Check him out, sportsmemo.com. Also does props in the NFL, and he's on a 19-9 run there. So check out his page, sportsmemo.com, for premium plays. Matt, can you leave us with a most confident play on the board of the games we talked about?
So I would think my two favorite ones, and they wouldn't be like, oh, throw the 5 units, throw the house at it. They're just ones because obviously there's not a ton of games here and it's the back end. So I'm kind of restricted a little. My two kind of favorite ones would be the team total under for Stanford, which is around 18.5 right now. I kind of like that even down to like 17.5. You kind of just want to stay above that key number or around that key number of 17. If that thing dips even more to like 16.5, then don't play it. And then I kind of like the over 19.5 for Charlotte. I think the 49ers offense is capable of scoring an early touchdown or two and maybe getting a garbage touchdown. As long as Reynolds is healthy and as long as he's got his big 3 wide receivers, I think Charlotte should be able to score some points here against UAB, who might have one eye later on looking towards that Western Kentucky game. 19.5 is around their team total. And as long as we stay below 20 and 21, I think that one's worth a look as well.
All right, the 49ers team total over. Maybe look towards Stanford on their team total under 17.5. Matt Josephs bringing the heat each and every week. Matt, sportsmemo.com, 3 years in college football. You heard the record, guys. Knows this stuff. NFL prop run, a 19-9 as well. Matt, anything in conclusion before we shut this down?
No, looking forward to it. Obviously, we're getting closer, Drew, to Tuesday and Wednesday action. That's always exciting. And yeah, just seeing college football well. The team totals are going well. And as you said, also NFL props, baseball stuff as the playoffs go along. So we're doing it well right now on sportsmemo.com. So you want to check it out.
All right. For Matt Josephs, I'm Drew Martin. Guys, that does it for the Every Game on the Board podcast. Each and every game, college football, doing it each and every week. Please smash that like button if you're liking the content. Feel free to reply below where you agree, where you disagree. Any thoughts are welcome. So, yeah, we'll be back next week with week number 8, college football, Every Game on the Board podcast. Have a fun, safe weekend and cash those tickets. Thanks for tuning in.